Hello everybody, I'm going live here. So the lesson here is walking in the Spirit. To do that, part of that process is to understand the works of the flesh. Because in order to walk in the Spirit, you have to be doing the opposite of what the flesh says to do. Okay? If you're living by the flesh, you're basically obeying whatever your flesh tells you to do. You know, if your flesh says, okay, be angry, you're going to be angry. Okay, be sad. Okay, you're going to be sad. And it does tie into your emotions. Okay? So, part of learning how to walk in the Spirit of God is to learn what to avoid, what to get away from. So this is going to be this lesson. Lesson 1 is works in flesh. We're going to be talking about adultery, fornication, uncleanness, and lewdness. Because let's just be honest, majority of these words are not ones we normally use. So let's dig into it. Okay. Paul begins his list in Galatians 5:19 by contending that the works of the flesh are evident. There is no gray areas or situational ethics involved in things that are sinful. In other words, there's no gray areas where you can go, well, this ain't bad, but this ain't good. You know? Now, there are neutral things, but not when it comes to the works of the flesh. There are neutral things like, let me give an example. I can play a board game, or I can play some cards. Let me show you. I can take these cards right here, and I can play them, okay, with people. Now, is that a bad thing? No. It's just a game. But is it a good thing? No, it's not prosperous. So, there are neutral things in life, yes. But there are not neutral things when it comes to God. In other words, there's no middle ground. One of the biggest lies that Satan has convinced the world of is that there's a middle ground where you can stand, where you're not on Satan's side, but you're not on God's side. And God says, that's not how I roll. He says, this is how I work. You're either with me or you're against me. Okay, he is what's called an absolute God. He's a God that deals in absolutes, in 100%. So you're either 100% with him or 100% against him. He doesn't work in the way of, oh, well, hey, you can go ahead and do your sinful ways and I'm going to continue loving you, and which he does do, even if you are, I mean, let's just be honest about that. He does do that. But he's not going to continue to try to mold you into his character if you're going to go, okay, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do and I'm not going to listen to the Spirit. You know what I mean? A good example of that would be, for those that have kids, do you want a kid who's going to be disobedient to you and not listen to you, be jumping around, screaming, yelling, fighting you, biting you, tearing up the house? No, you want a child that learns how to behave, right? Same thing with God, okay? There are no gray areas when it is involved with sinful and indulgent. Indulgent means, so to indulge means to give in to your desires. Okay, so if I'm indulging my desire for sex, it means I'm giving into the desire to have sex. Okay, and sinful desires is basically anything bad of unhealthy fleshly appetites. I'll say that again. Unhealthy, meaning not things that are healthy for you, but things that are not healthy for you. Okay. Fleshly, meaning worldly, meaning in the body, like your desire to hate, your desire to lust, your desire to masturbate, your desire to have sex, your desire, you know. And I'm not saying your desire to have sex is evil all the way, because let's just be honest, that desire itself was created by God for the purpose of being inside of marriage. Okay? And then appetites is something you crave or desire. Okay, so he lists 4 of them in verse 19. The first 2 is adultery. Okay, so adultery is the act of having sex with someone else other than who you are married to. So Muslims who believe they can have multiple wives, Muslims, they are constantly doing this act of adultery because they are having sex with someone else other than the one wife that they should be having. Okay, so every time they go to a different wife, or every time they go have sex outside of marriage, that's adultery. Now, the definition of adultery is this: if at any point in any sexual relationship you are having sex with someone, whether it's in your mind, in your heart, or in person, okay, and that person is married to somebody else, you are having sex. You are having adultery. You are making adultery. Okay. Now, in that particular case, the person who's making the adultery first is the one who's married, who's cheating. Okay. That's the first person who's committing adultery. The person who's having sex with the married person, who's not married to them, that person is committing adultery by connection. Only by connection, because that person is married. So that person belongs to somebody else. So how can you not be committing adultery if you're having sex? Now, we have a good example of this in the Bible. In the old days, there was a prophet, and that prophet went up to a king and said, "You're wrong for taking your brother's wife to be yours." Okay? Anyway, so adultery is the first one, and fornication is the second one. Now just on adultery real quick, there's a second term called double adultery. And what that is let's say you have two married couples. You have John and Beth and Mary and Joe. John and Beth, Mary and Joe. Let's just call them that. Okay. John and Beth, Mary and Joe. So let's say John, who's married to Beth, decides to have sex with Mary, who's married to Joe. Okay, so the two thumbs that I have right here so these are the married couples. The two thumbs go and have sex with each other. Okay, so both partners are actually committing adultery, which makes it double adultery. So if both partners are married to, so there's a term in the world. It's called swingers. Swingers is the name of it. SWINGERS. And what it means is you get a bunch of your friends who are married, y'all meet in a house, and you trade your spouse with somebody else, and you have sex with that person. So it's like you have like 5 or 6 different couples in a house. And I've read about this online, and and I've also seen it in like TV shows where they joke about it. So swingers is where you have like a bunch of different couples. They go in the house, and everybody would trade their spouse for that time to have sex. Okay, only for the purpose of sex. Now that's what's called swinging. That is also adultery. Fornication, however, is the word any sexual act outside of marriage. But we will get into that more. So those two things are obviously very closely related to each other. They are connected. Okay, both involve sexual activity outside the normal marriage bed. So outside of the marriage partnership with a man and a wife. Okay, so that's one thing. Marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, meaning not dirty. The bed needs to stay clean. Not the bed itself, like you need to clean your bed. No, this particular term means more along the lines of don't be bringing strangers into your bed to have sex with them, because that's supposed to be only for you and your partner. Okay. But fornicators, meaning people who have sex outside of marriage, this would be the equivalent of people that go out to bars today just to have sex. Okay. And hook up. Okay, that would be the equivalent today of fornicators. And adulterers, God will judge. This is Hebrews 13:4. Okay. Adulterers, God will judge. So you're asking yourself, okay, if I'm saved, how am I going to be judged? Just because you're saved does not mean you don't have to face what you do wrong. It just means when you go before God, you're going to have a lawyer with you, and that lawyer is Jesus, to stand on your behalf. Okay? That's all it means. But it means you still have to be accountable for what you do. Okay? Adultery comes comes to us from the Greek word moichaia. Moichaia, I think, is how it's saying. It's defined by Thayer as to have unlawful, meaning not unlawful intercourse. So it means basically having sex that's not lawful by God with another person's spouse. That is adultery. Okay. The most famous Bible example of adultery is found in the relationship between Israel's King David, a man of God, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Okay. Bathsheba, 2 Samuel 11. David had unlawful intercourse with that man's wife and was punished by God. Okay. Adultery was condemned from the inception of marriage in the Garden of Eden. And this prohibition was co-defined, meaning it was confined for both people in the Ten Commandments of Exodus 20. Adultery in the olden days was punishable by death under Moses. Adultery figures prominently in the rebukes of Jesus. Okay, so basically, if you were caught committing adultery, having sex outside of marriage, you were stoned and killed. Okay, now Jesus expanded on the teachings. Basically, he went deeper into the teachings of Moses and included adultery to also mean what you see and what you feel in your heart. Jesus said in the Bible, if any person would look onto someone to lust after them, they have already committed adultery with that person in their heart. So what does it mean to lust after someone? It means lust is basically, by definition, a strong sexual urge to have sex with the person for nothing more than for your own sexual pleasure. Okay? So those who go to bars, okay, they are having sex and lusting, because they're not hooking up because they want to find a relationship. They're hooking up because they just want to have sex. Okay. The word is used metaphorically, meaning not literally, in the New Testament to describe unfaithfulness to the Christian's first love, the Lord. Now, he does mean it literally, as in if you look after a person to lust after them, then you're committing adultery in your heart. But it also has a metaphorical term, which is don't be unfaithful to your first love, which is Jesus. So don't ever get into a relationship and take that relationship and go, this relationship I have with this man or woman is more important to me than my relationship with God. So the one place you don't want to go in your life is to say, I'm going to be married no matter what, even if God doesn't agree with it. That's where you go wrong. Okay, you have to put God first. And this is a good example of Christ saying, hey, listen to me. Listen here. Listen up. Okay, don't be putting things before me. Don't be putting things before the Father. Okay, don't be putting things as more important. And that is idolatry, by the way. Anytime you put something as more important than God, you're committing idolatry. Okay, so let's continue. Fornication. So we've talked about adultery. Fornication is from the Greek word porneia. Porneia. It's defined as illicit sexual intercourse in general. So this basically means any sexual intercourse that is not related to being married. Okay? Okay. Now, if you notice that word porneia, there's a word in this world that we know that is very closely, it's where we get the word porn. Pornography, porn. Adult sexual videos, okay? Porn. Porneia. So porn or porneia is fornication. So it goes on to describe what those particular fornications are. Okay, so thus, fornication would include every form of sexual immorality, including adultery, homosexuality, okay, harlotry, that means being a prostitute, bestiality, which is having sex with animals, and incest, which is having sex with family members, okay? All of that is included in fornication. The Lord God issued his opinion on sexual experimentation outside of marriage in Leviticus 18, listing the various perversions and condemning them boldly. So, you might ask yourself, what are those perversions that you ask? Now, I'm just going to read this real quick for you. Okay, so we're going to look at this just so you understand what I'm talking about here. Of all these perversions that he was talking about, okay? So we're in Leviticus 18, okay? Now, Leviticus is known, so Leviticus says this. These are the lists of, it doesn't say this directly, but it says these are the list of unlawful sexual relationships. Listen closely. No one is to approach any close relative to have sexual relations. That's in verse 6. Verse 7. Do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. So don't have sex with your mom. Verse 8. Do not have sexual relations with your father's wife. Verse 9. Do not have sexual relations with your sister, either your father's daughter or your mother's daughter. So anybody who's blood related to you. Okay. Number 10. Verse 10. Do not have sexual relations with your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter. That would be dishonoring to God. That would dishonor you as well. Verse 11. Do not have sexual relations with the daughter of your father's wife. So they're connecting someone who is, so that would be you marrying a guy, for the ladies out there, and then you having sex with their child. Okay. So it says, do not have sex with the daughter of your father's wife. But this would not be that way. So that would be a different one. So I just reread it. This is more specifically talk about. So let's say you're the kid, right? And you're like 18 years old. And your father gets married to a woman, and that woman has a child. So you guys are related only by marriage. It says don't have sex with that person. Okay? She is your sister by marriage. 12. So it's talking about don't have sex with anybody who's blood related. Don't have sex with anybody who's marriage related. Okay? Verse 12. Do not have sexual relations with your father's sister. So this would be your aunt, basically. She is your father's close relative. Verse 13. Do not have sexual relations with your mother's sister. Aunt, again. Oh, father's sister. Sorry, father's sister in verse 12. So this would be your aunt on your father's side. Verse 13 is your aunt on your mother's side. Okay. Verse 14. Do not dishonor your father's brother by approaching his wife. So this would be your father's brother's wife. Okay. Do not have sexual relations with your brother's wife. This would be your brother's wife. Even if she's left him and divorced. Okay. That would be dishonoring to your brother. 17. Do not have sexual relations with both a woman and her daughter. Okay. Do not have sexual relations with either her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter. They are close relatives. Do not take your wife's sister. Okay, so this is talking about do not hook up with your in-laws. So you're marrying someone, right? And they have a sister that's hot. Don't hook up with the hot sister. Okay. Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife and have sexual relations with her while your wife is living. Now it gives a stipulation to that. It says while your wife that you're married to is living, not married to you. It doesn't say while your wife is married to you. It says while your wife is living, alive. Don't have sex with your wife's sister. So as long as your ex is alive, you should not be trying to hook up with their sister. Okay. Number 19, do not approach a woman to have sexual relations with her during her period. Okay. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife. Your neighbor's wife, and defile yourself. Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to the enemy. It says, do not lie. Here's one for the gays out there, for the lesbians and gays. Do not lie, as in have sex with, a man as one does with a woman. Now you might say, okay, well, it's saying lie as in, it's spelling it as in like making a lie. Pay attention to the wording. Do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. That is detestable. It's ugly. It's disgusting to God. Okay. So verse 23. Do not have sexual relationships with an animal or defile yourself with it. A woman must must not present herself to an animal to have sexual relationships with it. That is perversion. Okay? And those are the various ways that it's talking about. Okay? So putting this back. Okay, so let's go. So that was 18. Listing the various perversions and condemning them boldly. God is condemning these perversions. So God is condemning the gay lifestyle, the lesbian lifestyle. He condemns it. Okay, he's saying as long as you stay in this, you're not going to see heaven. In fact, there's a verse in the Bible that, if you go forward in the New Testament, that point blank says that homosexuals are not welcome in heaven. Okay? So, let's continue. Okay? Fornication is also used throughout the book of Revelations to symbolize spiritual unfaithfulness and idolatry committed against God. So it's taken it a step further, as you can have spiritual adultery to cheat on God by putting anything else before God. So, I'll give you an example. Someone who decides, I want money more than I want God, has committed spiritual adultery to cheat on God in order to put money first. Okay? Uncleanliness is from the Greek word akatharia, meaning the impurity of lustful, luxurious, profligative lifestyle. Not really sure what that word means, profligated, but judging by the other words, it's very disgusting, very bad. The former sins might occur just once, which is enough to condemn the soul. But uncleanliness is a way of life, pay attention, is a way of life marked by sexual impurity. It means living a life that is all about you being sexually impure. So people that would be unclean would be people that constantly go out to the bars to have sex. Those are unclean people. Okay? Unclean in God's eyes on their own standard. But if they get saved through Jesus, yes, they're saved, but that doesn't mean going out doing it. The Bible clearly tells you if you continue doing what you did before, even after being saved, you might not actually be saved. Okay? And it actually condemns it as being a very bad thing. Okay? So, uncleanliness is a way of life marked by sex. Okay? This may include anything that feeds the appetite of illicit sexual indulgence. So, a porn addict, someone who's addicted to porn, who watches it day and night all the time, that also is an uncleanliness person. Okay. That is to have sex outside of the marriage bed. Okay. So then another example of that would be a prostitute. Another example of that would be a porn actor or actress. They are unclean and they are feeding that desire by living a life marked by sexual impurity. A life of uncleanliness would possess pornography, ribald jokes or sexual joking. So someone who constantly tells sexual jokes and stories, and public nudity. Okay, such a life is shameless and hardened against rebuke or guilt. In other words, the person who lives that kind of life, they're not feeling guilty. And if you try to set them straight about their wrongs, they will deny it and reject it. Lewdness and licentiousness, but it's the same word. Lewdness or licentiousness is from the Greek word asilgia, meaning wanton acts or manners, as filthy words, indecent bodily movements. So two people being clothed but grinding on each other and dancing sexually and grinding up against each other. Filthy words as in not cuss words, but filthy words as in sexual words. Like, oh, I want to do this to you. I want to do this to your body. I want to do this to your body. Unchaste handling of males and females. In other words, unchaste is like no limits, no boundaries. Lewd behavior is suggestive of the sexual act, whether a verbal description or physical mimicry. So, lewdness would be those girls or guys that you see on Instagram or TikTok that constantly show off their bodies. Those are lewdness people. Okay? They're not being, now I'm not talking about naked people. I'm talking about on Instagram and TikTok who have, you see them in some sexy outfit and they're dancing and they're shaking their bodies and they're trying to entice lust out of you. Those are lewd. They live in lewdness, in other words. Okay, so that's lewd behavior. Lewd. And it means any sexual joking or bodily movements. Okay. So, and you can tell that by what it says. So it's suggestive of any sex act. So it includes sexual activity, whether it's verbal description. So an example of that would be if you call up a phone sex line. If you call up A and you're calling up and she's like, oh, I want to do this to you and I want to do this to you and I want you to imagine my body doing this and that. Okay? That's also lewdness because it's verbal description. Or mimicry would be like you doing a visual demonstration visually. So like, let's say you're standing up and you're going like, I'm just going to imitate, and you're going like this, like you're doing the sex act. Okay, that's lewdness, an example, because you're physically mimicking, and mimicry means to physically copy. Okay, so you're physically copying the motion that usually takes place during sex. The alternate word for lewdness is lusciousness. It describes a life of vice and license to indulge in dubious behavior. So that goes more towards people who constantly go out and just give into their sexual desires constantly, all the time. Okay? But we're going to go more into it. So lewdness is threefold. It means it has three parts. Lewdness includes sexual comments, jokes, such as those popular on many television programs. It means indecent bodily movement. So yes, when you see a sexual scene, a sex scene in a movie, that is lewdness because they're copying the sexual body language. Okay? indecent bodily movements like that of modern dancing, which imitates the sex act and accentuates the body for the purpose of creating lust. So let's break that down. Let's break that down real quick. So it also includes any indecent. Indecent means not proper bodily movement. So someone standing up and going, or shaking. I've seen women do that where they're shaking their chest or bouncing their chest or something. Okay. Usually you'll see that stuff on Instagram or TikTok. So that's the indecent bodily movement like that. And it also includes modern dancing, which imitates the sexual act. So it's two people dancing where they're grinding their bodies against each other and rubbing their bodies against each other. So the type of dancing they're talking about is like what you would see normally on a dance floor in a bar when you have a drunk guy and a drunk girl and they're dancing and they're like very close and just trying to be very sexual with each other without taking their clothes off. So that's the modern dancing they're talking about. But the dancing that they're talking about specifically imitates the sexual act. So pretend my hands are man and woman. So if you have two people dancing and they're doing this is their pelvis, by the way. This is like the woman's pelvis area, the waist area of the woman. This is the waist area of the man. So if they're dancing and they're doing this and rubbing each other, bumping the bodies against each other or rubbing the bodies against each other, they are doing it dance to imitate the sexual act. So what else would this include? This would also include a woman bending over and a guy behind her and then bumping the body up against her like they're having sex. So anything that would imitate the sexual activity that you would do with someone that you love. Okay. And it also includes those who promote a sexual body for the purpose of create. So it also would include those on Instagram and TikTok who project their body in such a way to try to bring lust out of you. Okay. And the unchaste, meaning unlimited, no limits, no boundaries, handling of males and females, which includes heavy petting outside of marriage. So heavy petting would be, let me grope you. Groping would be the word for that. So it's like you're not married outside of marriage, but you want to go and grab the woman's chest, or you want to go grab the woman's butt, or the girl wants to grab the guy's thing. Okay. So that would be having petting or rubbing those areas. Okay. That's what's called heavy petting outside of marriage and most intimate dancing. So a lot of dancing also includes grinding against each other. And when you do that, you're also being lewdness. Okay. The last of these vices is remarkable in that it will often lead to the first three. Many of marriages has been wrecked by these subtle incursions in the marriage bed and a mind that becomes addicted to partial indulgence of an illicit appetite. Okay? So what that would be is you're married to someone and you have this friend who's of the opposite sex and they say some comment to you when no one else is listening, and they're saying that comment to get in your head to make you imagine having sex with them. So it would be like let's say I'm married to and I have a wife. Let's say I have a female friend who says, "Oh, I know you would really want to enjoy this body of mine." Okay, and she says it when my wife is not around. Her objective is to get in my head to make me fantasize and thus produce lust and adultery by doing that, okay, into my mind, okay? And that's a no-no as well. So while Christians are in the minority in opposition to racy stories, modern dancing, immodest attire mean clothing that is not appropriate, or mixed bathing. Mixed bathing is bathing together with lots of different people. But the attire would be like, you see these girls going out and they're all in these outfits that are so hot that you know that the only purpose they have for wearing that outfit is to make other guys lust after them. Okay? It is evident why God cautions us against falling into these lesser evils. He calls them lesser evils because they're not as big as some of the other evils, like murder or rape or any of those higher ones. Okay, it's still an evil. It's just lesser. But remember, God says if you're guilty of something of a lesser evil, you're guilty just as you would be if you were guilty of a high evil. Okay, to God, the evil, there's no evil realms in the way of, if you're guilty of this, you're guilty of everything, is what God said in the Bible. He says if you're guilty of breaking one of my commandments, you're guilty of breaking them all. Okay, by the world's standard, such things create a yearning in your heart that poisons it against faithfulness, okay, and piety. And I believe piety is like being devoted to God. I'm not sure. Eventually, the addiction that you have will require more and more of the sexual narcotic, and the Christian will be enslaved to the devil again. Wait a minute. A Christian can be enslaved to the devil? Yes, he can. Okay? So let's look more into this. 1. Define each of the works of the flesh discussed in this lesson. Define adultery. So you can take a piece of paper and write down these questions that I'm going to read and define this for yourself if you want. Okay? Define each of the works of the flesh discussed in this lesson. Adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lewdness. Okay, that's the first question. Second question. How does the Hebrew writer intend with the phrase the marriage bed? In other words, what do they mean when they say the marriage bed? It means the boundary lines of the marriage. Okay, that's just my understanding of it. What event led to David's adultery to Bathsheba? What event happened? I can give you the answer to that real quick. The event that happened was, instead of David being out in battle, David was home in his palace, and he looked out into his city and he saw Bathsheba bathing out in his city, and that's what created the adultery. Now it says, what did his adultery cause him to do? The answer to that is it caused him to to send the man who was married to the woman out to battle to die. Okay, so that he could have the wife. Number 4. Question 4. What did Joseph do when Potiphar's wife enticed him to commit adultery? This is in Genesis 39. I will let you figure that one out since I gave you the verse. Question 5. What is the difference between adultery and fornication listed in this? Okay. Question 6. Why was sexual immorality condemned so strongly in 1 Corinthians 6:18-20? I'm going to let you figure that one out. Question 7. Why is it significant? The sexual immorality is the only reason for a scriptural divorce. In other words, why was it given that the only reason you can spiritually divorce your wife is if they've committed sexual immorality? That's in Matthew 19, verse 3-9, if you want to read that. Question 8. Name a Bible character who lived a life of uncleanliness at some point. Okay? I can know of one right off the top of my head. Mary Magdalene. Okay? Number 9. Question 9 is 3 parts. So what are the 3 types of lewdness or lusciousness by definition? Okay? And you might want to rewatch the video and pay attention if you don't know. Question 10. Are the following examples of lewdness? Are these examples of lewdness? Mixed swimming. Nude swimming, for example. Is that an example? I'm going to let you take a guess on that. I know what the answers are, but I'm going to let you take a guess for that. Is B. B is a husband and a wife swimming privately. Is that lewdness? Okay. Question C, or question C of that question, number 10, is sexual innuendo lewdness? Sexual innuendo would be, hey, I know you want to take me to bed. I know you want to have sex with me. I know you want to do so many naughty things with me. That would be what's called sexual innuendo. Innuendo means you are insinuating the idea of sex in someone's head. Okay? Is that lewdness? Okay? Next thing is clean joking. Clean jokes. Clean jokes. Is that lewdness? And the last one is modern dancing lewdness. Okay. Number 11. Question 11. Why is mixed swimming an example of lewdness? And question 12. What happened to Herodias' daughter who danced for Herod? This is in Matthew 14, verse 1 through 11. Okay. And that is the first part of this particular lesson. We will talk about the next part, lesson 2, works of the flesh, idolatry and sorcery, okay, in the next session. Thank you for your time. God bless everyone and take care.